once I got that award, people made fun of me for being a so-called genius. I just try to do my work, and try to deserve the award. And you try to find out what it is, that is really worth doing in your work. What about your work needs to be pursued, and so that's what I've tried to do, after this big fuss.
Yeah, but there's a truth behind it, because you are a very good writer. Also, you write for the New Yorker, New York Times. Also a libretto for an opera.
Yeah.
You're a good piano player. So there is a truth, I think.
Well, the writing is, there aren't that many pianists who are also writers, and it's a side of me that I kind of ignored a lot in my 20s, and then because I was being a pianist, I was just practicing. And then in my 30s, a friend of mine at NPR in America, the big radio station, she said, "You have to start a blog. You just have to." And when I started doing it, it was this incredible pleasure, because there are lots of things that you think of when you're practicing, ideas that don't belong in a program note, that can't go in a pre-concert lecture, that don't belong anywhere, but in the blog you can pursue these weird avenues of thought and different ways of approaching Mozart or Beethoven from irreverent back doors, and then suddenly I found that I was able to discover things about the pieces by writing about them that I had only dimly understood when I was practicing them.
But that's also part of marketing, because by writing a blog, everyone around the world can read about you.
I didn't start it as a marketing situation, although I think my friend at NPR was thinking that it might help to find me some attention. And I was as surprised as anyone when the blog began to be read around, by people at the New Yorker and stuff. Because I pursued it at first for my own pleasure, just for... also, I used to love to read, I love words. I love the way that a beautiful paragraph comes together. I lost several years of my life reading Proust, when I probably should have been practicing more. So the act of finding for me, the perfect way to express something about a piece of music, it can be very satisfying when you get it in words, just the thing that you're interested in. And it's very hard, but it can be very satisfying too.
You have also studied chemistry. How about that?
Well, I forgot most of chemistry. When I went to college, I was just 16. And my parents were very worried about money and life and things. And I had many interests, English, chemistry, math, So I went into chemistry as I went for a double major, piano and chemistry at Oberlin. And then, by the time I was at college, a year or two, I knew I would be a pianist. I had that confidence. But I was almost done with the chemistry degree by that point, so I finished it. But I sold all my chemistry books, and I've forgotten so much.
So your awareness of chemistry hasn't helped you with your piano playing at all?
It helps me in the kitchen occasionally, but not as much with the piano playing. The English courses I took, of course, the way of thinking. I had this amazing English professor who wrote these very precise and careful comments on your papers, and he was often telling me, what you're saying, makes sense, but do you really feel that this is what the work of art, this poem or novel is? Do you think that's what it really does? Is that what the poem is really after? And then I was like, that's interesting. I'm not just writing the paper because I have to write the paper, but because I want to find some truth in relation to this work of art, some reality, And that was an important lesson, that carried over into music making too.
Sure. Last time you were in Finland, it was 2 years ago, you played Bartók's Second. Is that a coincidence that when you came today, you play Bartók Third?
It's a little bit of a coincidence, but not a huge coincidence, because I had a very beloved Hungarian teacher, George Sebak, who, and incidentally, whenever I come to Finland and I hear the accent, the rhythm, it's the same rhythm in many ways as Hungarian, and it's this. It makes me feel this special, like I'm listening to my teacher again talk about. Anyway, Sebak, one of the first things he wanted to teach me was about Bartók and what to do with it, and so it's some of the music that I love the most. And Bartók was really one of the good guys of music history. He was an honest, artist, and he was selfless and not a big self-promoter, which is why he ended up rather poor, I guess, finally. And he wrote this music of incredible integrity and joy, So it's not a coincidence because I love this music.
You have also played the Bartók 3 with Susanna,
Yes.
like couple of times in Cleveland and in San Francisco.
Yes, indeed.
Is it now polished to perfection for Helsinki performances?
It's getting better. It's getting better. It's funny how these things happen. This is a piece that I worked on when I was a little twerp. When I was 26 or 27, I learned it. And I came back to it, and then, of course, your 26-year-old self is in there, and you're trying to teach them. No, I want to be now my slightly more mature 40-something self, and I want to think differently about this music. This piece is a kind of a older man's piece, because it's after all the virtuosity and the wildness and the sort of violence of younger Bartók, This is a retrenchment, but also it reminds me a little bit of one of my other favorite pieces, Verdi's Falstaff, the only comedy that he wrote when he was 84 years old. That it has this sense of embracing humanity, and it also has this sense, there's a great deal of wit and play in it, in the outer movements, and then in the middle movement is encased this incredibly deep feeling, like an incredible farewell to music. And I love pieces that have that, that have this joy of life coinciding with the darkest and deepest feeling, and somehow a piece that makes both of those possible to live in the same space. That's very important to me. I think Beethoven Fourth Concerto is also like that. It has that quality.
So, is there a message you want to send to people by playing Bartók?
By playing Bartók in general? Well,
Yeah.
each piece has a different spirit to it. But again, Bartók's music has this tremendous strength and surprising amount of beauty, despite the reputation for being a wild, dissonant man. He really cut his teeth. He made a lot of his progress, writing harmonizations of folk tunes that in a way don't belong in conventional Western harmony. And he wrote the most subtle and beautiful voice leading, little chromatic notes. And he worked so hard on the precise right notes in the middle to make the upper voice work and to make it idiomatic, to make it work both as a folk tune and as a classical tune, like to straddle exactly. And that in kind of beautiful discovery of the possibility of notes and harmonization. I think that's one of the things. This piece, for sure, is all about, the most beautiful harmonizations of things.